Chapter 2. You know, driving this wildly is not good for when I'm trying to eat a bowl of cereal, Alison complained in the backseat of my Jeep. You're eating what in my car? I yelled, jerking my head to see that Alison had brought a giant Tupperware bowl of cereal and milk that was sloshing on the verge of spilling. You guys made me leave just when I had a craving for some cereal. Alison deflected the blame better than any grade A politician. That cereal you're eating is filled with sugar, Mariah pointed out, having to take the healthy high ground. It's not even cereal, it's just sugar over grain. Hey, I watched the commercial for these cocoa blocks, Alison yelled. It's part of a nutritious breakfast. I, too, have seen the commercial, and when they discuss that part, there's a fruit bowl and a vegetable omelet next to it, I confirmed. It might actually have been 2 omelets, with every single vegetable in the world. Spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes, onions, squash, pumpkin, and God knows what else. Probably some fat-burning pills, green tea extract, and calorie-deficient medication, which was reminiscent of gas station boner medication. Who says I didn't have the veggie omelet and the fruit? Alison spat. Apparently, she wanted us to believe that she had eaten the vegetable omelet of a lifetime and the big-ass bowl of fruit. The last time Alison had a fruit, it was contained in a blueberry pie, and the last vegetable that she had was in a carrot cake. You didn't? Mariah rolled, which made Alison give a nasty look while clutching her cereal. Daggers would have flown had that been possible. Actually, daggers was an understatement. 2-handed broadswords would be more accurate. Hopefully this will be one of those trips when we see the ring and can quickly get it, I sighed. Wouldn't that be nice? Mariah didn't even comment. She just snorted. It wasn't hard to find Maxamillion's place since we had the address, a GPS in my phone, and a giant sign that said Ladorva Estate. Oh, he's rich, Alison clarified, as if we weren't sure about Maxamillion Ladorva's financial situation. Only rich people name their house. Really? I asked. Don't you call your apartment the Lux Pad or something? And you're poor. It's not a legitimate name, Alison cried out. I don't have a sign or anything. Whatever. I turned back to the property. Between the dozen bedrooms, 4 decks, 3 hot tubs, and a heavily landscaped property with imported vegetation, I have a feeling it's obvious that the man's rich. What do you know about this guy again? Mariah pondered. I mean, besides he's rich and we're underpaid and underqualified to do this. Check the folder. I pointed to a small folder of information I had printed off back at the office. Mariah did not appear happy to be doing work in the passenger seat. Well, no convictions, but Maxamillion was suspected of being involved in an insurance scam, Mariah recalled. Apparently one of his company's headquarters blew up. It seems he took the money and ran. They sold the land and haven't rebuilt the building. The company itself seems to exist, but it's not anywhere near the level it used to be. So basically Maxamillion turned a failed business into cash by blowing the building up, but he still keeps the company in some form so he doesn't look guilty? I summed up. Exactly, Mariah nodded. But it doesn't seem like anyone can get anything on him. That's the problem with being the richest guy in the region. Maxamillion can just easily slither his way out of crimes. He probably thinks he's invincible, Alison argued from the back seat as she scrolled through social media. That's why he stole the diamond ring. It's a power move. Is he even home? We all looked across the estate while sitting in my Jeep on the road outside of the house. As far as I knew, there could be 100 people hidden within the house, as if they were waiting for a surprise birthday party. I can't tell, Mariah answered for the group. The lights are all off, but that doesn't mean anything. They could be sleeping or something. It's almost noon, I gasped. Rich people like to sleep in, Mariah said factually. I thought they liked to get up unreasonably early. I recall seeing things about rich people getting up at 5 in the morning and judging poor people for not doing the same. Mariah considered that. Well, if I was rich, I'd sleep in. I pointed to the security hut. Should we do a perimeter check? It seems like the security hut is empty. The little security hut at the front of Maxamillion's drive was something you'd see at an apartment complex or enclosed suburban gated community. And while it looked equipped for a guard or two, the hut was more abandoned than my sense of dignity at a pizza buffet. Mariah, Alison, and I got out of the car and walked around the house. We peered into windows and actually did see a security guard or two. They looked lazy and checked out. I assumed Maxamillion rarely had security issues if the security was this lax. I could probably get us in, Alison cooed, looking at the window. I could see the pleasure of destroying the glass panes on her face. Let's save that for another time, I dissuaded Alison while we rounded the corner of the house. In front of us was a stunning pond. Whoa, he really is rich, I whispered, eyeing the water feature, which had a 3-tier waterfall and a fancy rock formation. It looked like something you'd see at a rich hotel in Europe. Not that I knew from experience. The only Venice I went to was the one in Florida. The wildlife seemed to enjoy it. Mariah pointed to the small family of ducks who were using the water. The ducks glared at us as if we were interrupting their family dinner. I didn't know that rich ducks could give attitude, but I suppose these ducks had a higher net worth than we did. Maxamillion has a giant mansion, a security team, and a lake of ducks. Why would he steal a diamond ring? I pondered to Mariah and Alison, while the ducks swam away from the side of the pond we stood at. Wouldn't Maxamillion be able to buy a whole room full of diamond rings? The rich get richer and greedier. It doesn't surprise me at all, honestly. Mariah looked more confident speaking about the rich than Karl Marx. I think I believe Vegas. I can picture someone like Maximilian Ladorva stealing someone's personal items, and that includes Vegas. I was not as sure as Mariah. We've been looking at this house for a while. It just doesn't look like any diamond rings are being smuggled. I just don't really see a motive here past miscommunication and forgetfulness. There's a motif, Alison called me out. You mean motive? Mariah clarified. Well, both. Alison pointed to the nearest room. The motif they're using in that room is flowers. You can tell between the beautiful flower paintings on that white wall beset against the beautiful flower wallpaper. Mariah and I were momentarily impressed with Alison's HGTV-level skill set. And the motive? I got us back on track. Alison didn't even have to think. Men suck and use women. Well, that's more of a theme, Mariah teeter-tottered. I doubled down, like when I was offered mac and cheese pizza at the previously aforementioned pizza buffet. I just don't think we have the evidence that Maxamillion did anything. What do you want us to do? Mariah demanded to know. Should we go up to the front door, knock, introduce ourselves as investigators, and say, "Hello, did you happen to steal a diamond ring from the town's most popular sex worker, Vegas?" The door would slam so fast that I'd be blown off the stoop and into the duck pond. Judging by the continual glare of the ducks, they would not be happy with that outcome. Mariah had a point. I don't know why I was expecting to find heavy evidence that the ring was in Maximillion's possession just by peering into a few rooms. Besides, Vegas was spending a lot of money for our help. Why would she lie about this? I just didn't believe there was a grand story past Vegas leaving the ring behind by accident. Can we go now? I pleaded. We need to come back another day. Nobody's home and we'll need to stalk Maxamillion. I reminded myself of a small child who wasn't getting candy while at the supermarket. I was immature, whiny, and somewhat conceited. I turned into a devil when I got whiny about my time. Fine, Mariah spat, and we walked back to the car and piled in. In seconds, we left Saff Street and made our way to the middle-class side of town. The difference was like the difference between North Dakota and Fiji. 1 minute, we were in an area with rich homes, fancy Ferraris, and emerald-gilded mailboxes, and bam! The neighborhood turned over to 2-bedroom duplexes, plastic mailboxes, and decade-old Hondas. Soon, we pulled up to the office, and I noticed hunger pains in my stomach. Let's get some lunch, I told Mariah, who didn't respond to my statement, but began walking to the Chai Tolpi down the block. I hurried up after her. Nobody that we worked with ignored their stomach, and Chai Tolpi sounded tasty. Oh, this stuff is good, Alison muttered in line, but it goes through me. My hunger dimmed a little bit by imagining Alison's bathroom situation, but it wasn't enough to cancel out my gnawing stomach. The line in Chai Tolpi spread out into a sea of heads. Thankfully, this particular location had fast service. The location 2 miles west was notorious for underserving, while the Chai Tolpi 3 miles east was always blocked up like Alison was after eating at this restaurant. Hello, the Chai Tolpi worker smiled. My bet was that this was a new server, since they appeared too happy to be working in the restaurant industry. I say this as someone who waited tables one summer before declaring I'd never work in a kitchen again. Whatever, Mariah scowled, which made the server look offended. I wanted to give the server some inspirational words, but the only words that came to mind were tough luck and too bad. Mariah continued, steak burrito with the black beans and the fajita onions and peppers. The Chai Tolpi worker looked like he had been slapped. He quickly put the steak, peppers, onions, and black beans on the tortilla and passed it on to the next worker. Well, more like shoved than passed. I think he was more than happy to mistreat Mariah's meal. I loved Mariah like a sister, but when she was in a mood, everyone around her was pulled into her emotions. I apologize for my friend, I told the worker, a bit loudly so Mariah could hear it. She's had a rough day. The worker nodded and tried forcing a smile. My upcoming demands were way too sugary and a misguided effort to make up for Mariah. I'll have the carnitas and the pinto beans. Alison stepped up to the plate. She was one of those people at Chitolpi and other cafeteria line establishments where she was always saying more to everything being put on her burrito. Alison's burrito never fit in the tortilla. It always looked like roadkill, splattered out and left for dead. The tortilla struggled to contain the food, like a 50-year-old large woman fitting into her slim teenage prom dress. You don't have to be extra nice to people, Mariah bitterly slid to me as we scooted down the line to get toppings. I don't get why you're upset. It just feels like you're disregarding my opinion. I'm sorry for that. I was a bit too close-minded. I still don't understand why a rich man would want to steal a diamond ring. I doubt it's about the ring, Mariah countered sharply. It's because he thinks he can steal the ring. He likes lording over women. Okay, now that I can see. Mariah softly rolled her eyes. Now he gets it. Mariah and I paid and made our way to the door. 2 Chitolpi employees were trying to shove Alison's massive meal with 1 tortilla, but had decided to incorporate a second tortilla. It was like watching a master's level architecture class. Mariah and I walked out of the door that was marked exit. However, an old lady was trying to enter using that door, so there was a jostling and collision. I was initially confused because I didn't think old people liked spicy and slightly cultural foods like Chitolpi. Didn't they get gas from all that? But then I realized who was trying to enter through the exit door. She was the queen of the suburbs charter of the Crimson Hat Society. She looked like a bat and talked like an elderly politician. She was sarcastic and rude and hated children, which was weird because she had taught 3rd grade. She had been my 3rd grade teacher and had hated me even as a small child. Her spice cake was as dry as the driest place in hell and on Earth after the deserts and Antarctica, and if the workers of Chitolpi thought that Mariah had been a monster, they were in for a treat when they served this beast in front of our eyes, Mrs. Dorriander. "Look who it is," Mrs. Dorriander shouted. "It's the depressing gothic girl and her partner in stupidity, the man who ruined my Scarlet Hat Society charter, Dumbo. What are you 2 doing? Investigating a missing dollar bill? I doubt you're capable of doing real work." I really don't know how one can actively hate a 3rd grader. From what I've heard, Mrs. Dorriander always found a kid in her class to be her main target. She tried to fail me and claimed I wasn't capable of basic English. Once that was easily disproven, Mrs. Dorriander was slapped on the wrist, and I was moved along to 4th grade. I think my parents considered a lawsuit, but were placated just to find Mrs. Dorriander's advocation on my stupidity to be just a falsehood. I thought I would never see Mrs. Dorriander again after 3rd grade, but last year, when I was still a new investigator and bond enforcer, I chased a skip into a library branch. The chase went through a meeting room, which was also a dead end. In that meeting room was Mrs. Dorriander and her Scarlet Hat charter. Tea and crumpets were upended, an old lady screamed like a bunch of goats, and the skip shot out a few bullets. Thankfully, no one was injured, and the skip was apprehended. I do know that because of that incident, Mrs. Dorriander's chapter of the Scarlet Hat Society shrunk from 40 members to less than 15. She's blamed me for that and has never forgiven me. That incident was just the icing on top of a hate cake that Mrs. Dorriander had been baking for years. You can just hear the vitriol in Mrs. Dorriander's voice as she nicknamed me Dumbo. "If there was anyone who should be called a Dumbo, it would have to be you, Dorriander," Mariah snapped. "Your ears are floppy, you're more robust than an elephant, and people have called you Dumbo behind your back." Mariah was not nice to senior citizens, unless they were kind and kooky or passed out cookies. Meanwhile, I wondered if I was as robust as an elephant. I was slowly pushing into a new shirt size. "Did I make fun of you, goth girl?" Dorriander spat. "I apologize for not getting emotional." Like Mariah, Mrs. Dorriander wasn't one to back down from a sass fight. I avoided confrontation like the stereotypical Libra I am. I had yet to say a single word and could tell I was probably going to be silent in this match. "Sorry for not kicking your ass across the block," Mariah growled. "Thankfully, you're so ancient it wouldn't take more than a punt." "Oh, please, you wouldn't harm an old lady." I could tell there was a glimpse of fear in Mrs. Dorriander. "More like an old bag," I managed to cut in, and Dorriander faced to glare at me. "Stay out of this, Matty. I believe it's between me and this delinquent." It seemed I wasn't good enough to be part of this conversation. This felt like high school all over again. "What are you doing here, Dorriander?" Mariah asked. "I think the last thing you should be doing is getting spicy food. It'll go straight to your ass, and it doesn't need it." "Shut the hell up," Dorriander scathingly said in a tone that felt like a bucket of boiling water. "I'm surprised you were able to pay for your meal today." Thankfully, credit cards existed, whereas sometimes funds in checking accounts did not. "You want to talk about poor?" Mariah asked, giving Mrs. Dorriander a giant up-and-down look. "Looks like you went clothes shopping at a morgue." Mariah pushed past Mrs. Dorriander, and I followed in pursuit. Alison was still holding up the line by asking for all 4 salsas. "That woman has more hate in her heart than I thought was possible for a single human being," Mariah steamed. "The problem is that you assumed she's a human being. I really think she's some kind of demon spawn. I can't believe she's still alive. She's looked ancient since I was in 3rd grade. Damn, she must be really old then." I had a brief moment of realizing my age was flashing by quicker than a brief light flickering Morse code message. I was only in my 20s, and even by gay standards, I was in my early 30s. I wasn't over the hill yet, although I could see the inkling of an incline. As for Mrs. Dorriander, I wondered if she had discovered the medical benefits of hatred and disgust. Alison joined us moments later, carrying a large bag, which was usually given out when someone had ordered multiple items. Mariah and I were both clutching a small brown bag, but Alison's bag had handles. "My burrito was too big to fit in a small bag," Alison proudly informed as we walked back to the office. "How was that possible?" "They were worried the burrito was going to break." Alison held the bag as if her baby was in it instead of a white version of Mexican food. It suddenly dawned on me our lack of thought behind this lunch decision. Should we be eating chitolpi if we have a dating event tonight? I'm also testifying in court tomorrow. What if I get sick? No one ever gets sick from chitolpi. Alison paused in silence for a moment. Okay, a couple people have, but what's the chance that you have E. coli in your burrito? I took a deep sigh and entered Lucky Bonds and Investigations to see Jack Douhicky standing at reception. Kathy was ignoring him and reading her erotica. I couldn't believe I was running into my 2 biggest haters. I felt like a pop star in their flop era. "Look who's here, it's Loserville Express," Douhicky giggled. Jack Douhicky's name should be Jack Douchebag. Nobody at the office liked him, but for some reason, Jack Douhicky hated me the most. I don't know what it was about my pretty neutral, beige-colored self. People just loved to hate me. Mariah was itching for another fight. "That wasn't funny. It looks like you've been waiting for us to show up for a while. You could have workshopped something better." "He's been here for too long," Kathy murmured, but she kept her eyes concentrated on her sexy story. "I agree. I'd grade that insult a D," I added. "Oh, shut up," Douhicky snapped. "Why don't you 2 go suck a D? Oh, wait, you're both helplessly single. You couldn't catch any letter of the alphabet." I was about to counter with a sassy comment like, "The only letters you can catch are STI," or "You can't catch letters since you can't read." But Alison gave Douhicky a nuclear bomb for him to use against us. "They're going to Cleveland Dating Week. They're trying to find love." I couldn't help but notice how Alison made it seem like she wasn't slated to make an appearance at Cleveland Dating Week, especially since this had been her idea. Douhicky's smile was so infuriating. The type that I assumed snakes had when they came across unprotected eggs. "Wow, so you 2 officially have become losers. I love that. So desperate to find love that you're going to mingle with all the other losers? Will Cleveland Dating Week have a whole cry fest over the fact that you're all spinsters? Now that I've learned how far you've fallen, I can go catch a skip with gusto in my step." "How about you go catch gonorrhea too?" I spat as Douhicky cheerfully bounced out of the office. I was more pissed that Douhicky had a skip than his prancing happiness at our dating lives. I had to pay for my chitolpi meal in a series of 4 payments over 2 months. Alison put her hands on her hips, outraged. "I hope his skip beats him up. The way he treated you 2 for going to Cleveland Dating Week." "Bitch, you're going too," Mariah snapped. "Thanks for the solidarity." The doors opened to reveal Vegas. "Afternoon," Vegas smiled, leaning forward and digging around in Kathy's bowl of lemon drops. "I figured I'd stop by and see how the investigation is going." Vegas appeared to have expected progress in 2 hours. Did she want updates via text messages and phone calls? Did she want us to find the ring in less than a day? I'm not sure what Vegas expected, but this wasn't what I expected. I thought we would get the ring and then call her. Call her on her normal cell phone, not her cell phone set aside for clients. Neither Mariah nor I wanted any sort of people-pleasing out of Vegas. "It's going well," I lied. "We have some good leads that we hope to follow up on." I hated lying, but if I didn't tell Vegas that some progress was being made, she'd probably go out and shoot up Maxamillion's estate herself. That's wonderful. Vegas held up her hand, and I saw several rings that looked more expensive than 4 months of mortgage payments. I would have thought Vegas had plenty of replacement rings, but maybe it truly was a family heirloom on the lam. Vegas popped in a lemon drop and sucked on it vigorously. Is there anything else we can help you with? Mariah asked, a bit confused over what was happening. No, I just wanted to check in, Vegas casually muttered, and she popped another lemon drop into her mouth. I was extremely confused. Who eats lemon drops from a crusty-looking bowl? I had a feeling the lemon drops were pushing 5 years old and were glued to the bowl in that sticky, melted sugar way. Every time I walked past Kathy's desk, the lemon drops got harder and drier. The only people who I've seen attempt to eat lemon drops were Vegas and Alison. And even Alison had given up recently. Sounds good. We'll see you soon, I grinned. Vegas either got the hint or took it upon herself to leave. Mariah and I faked enthusiastic waves to Vegas, who skipped off to her next appointment. It was weird that everyone was leaving as if they were field skipping like they were in the intro for the Little House on the Prairie. She ate a lot of my lemon drops. Kathy looked devastated, as if she had just bought them this week. Well, that's a shame, Helen snapped as she walked over from her office door, handing Kathy a stack of folders. Maybe you can buy another year's worth of lemon drops today. An offended Kathy wheeled away on her casts towards the files. Didn't we hire someone to file folders? I asked Helen. Shouldn't Kathy be manning the phones? Manning the phones? What do you think this is? A sex call warehouse? Helen's sarcasm was duly noted. We did have someone a little while ago, Mariah recalled. Remember that girl Lindsay? She mostly slept on the job and ate all our food. It flooded back to me. I remember her. She had orange hair, and she was always annoyingly snapping her gum. She's why I started eating out for lunch all the time. She would steal my sandwiches. And she kept parking in Helen's parking spot in the parking lot. What happened to her? I fired her, Helen roared, and we focused our attention on Helen. When Helen got mad, it was like watching fireworks. She wasn't a good filer, and she ate all the leftover velvet cupcakes that I saved for my lunch. Anyway, I have a tough skip for you to do. Tomaz Gallagher. I almost fell over. Tomaz Gallagher had so many minor convictions that I was surprised he wasn't currently in the state prison for being a nuisance. He had been convicted of animal cruelty, abuse, assault, concealed weapons, petty theft, accessory, and many more convictions. He rarely, maybe never, got a felony charge. But he put the Mr. into the word misdemeanor. Tomaz Gallagher was especially crafty. Worse yet, he didn't look like the kind of slimy skis-ball you'd expect. He had bold black glasses and thick, professionally cut hair. I had captured Tomaz 5 times, and each time he managed to get better at not being caught. It was like training AI, and suddenly realizing you'd created a beast. Off to Gordon Square, I sighed, having memorized Tomaz's address. What about Cleveland Dating Week? Alison asked, strutting forward. Well, we can go to Cleveland Dating Week after we get Tomaz. I shrugged. That's not going to work for me. Alison crossed her arms tightly. I need to get ready, change clothes, get cute. Do you think this beauty is just natural? I eyed her hair extensions, copious amounts of makeup, and bright yellow spandex. Definitely not natural. Fine. Mariah and I can handle Tomaz, I relented, realizing this was not the hill I wanted to die on. You just go get ready for Cleveland Dating Week. I faced Mariah. Do you need to go get ready for Cleveland Dating Week? I have a button-up shirt in my car. Meh, a guy should love me for me, you know? Mariah explained as I eyed a couple chitolpi stains on her shirt. I suppose those stains would be the least of their concerns if they fell in love with Mariah. Mariah and I left the office when a car came out of nowhere, almost running us down on the sidewalk. Both Mariah and I screamed and jumped back out of the way, and the car bolted back onto the street before careening down Cedar and taking a harsh turn on their first left. The whole thing felt like a bad player who was enjoying his copy of Grand Theft Auto. What the hell was that about? Mariah looked a bit frantic. That's the same car, I told Mariah. The one from earlier that did that slow drive-by. This doesn't make any sense. Either someone was out for revenge, or someone was driving around drunk as hell. Well, Matty, let's get to Gordon Square before we get run over again. Gordon Square featured delicious restaurants, a ton of local theater productions, and some of the best local leather goods and donuts in the city. Gordon Square was also filled with some of the most gossipy people in Cleveland. I wasn't sure if it was the close-quartered living, the large chunk of gays, or maybe the amount of bars you could have in one strip. I'd once been involved in a rumor that spread across the city. It had been about the incident with Mrs. Dorriander and the Scarlet Hat Society. According to the rumor, I had told Mrs. Dorriander to shove a tampon up her ass, eaten a ton of Scarlet Red Hat Societies, and killed someone. The only mostly true rumor was the first, but I hadn't told her to insert a tampon. It had been a broom, and I had only been that creative because there was a nearby broom for insult inspiration. Tomaz Gallagher would probably stab his own mother with a knife to avoid capture, so when Mariah and I arrived at his house, we knew we had to be ready for him to escape. "Hello, what's this?" Tomaz asked as he opened the door. I gave him a "what the hell" expression. "You should know who I am," I snapped. "I've captured you at least 5 times. How could someone forget a person like me? It was sort of hard. Well, in this context, I suppose. Sure, I didn't live the fast life, or a grand one either. I guess besides being a local investigator and a half-bit bounty hunter, I was pretty unmemorable." "Really? I don't recall." Tomaz shook his head, but then I remembered this was Tomaz's first line of defense. It was the "I don't know who you are" act, and I had fallen for it multiple times before. Right now, I wish I was more like Alison, who probably would have tased, tackled, or seduced Tomaz into submission. "Well, recall this." I held up a sheet with his arrest details. "You missed your court date. Let's see what you were arrested for. A concealed weapons charge." Tomaz looked puzzled, like he had never been arrested before in his life. "I seriously don't recall. Are you sure it's for me?" Tomaz commented. "It is for you, because it has your name on it." Mariah's fury was beginning to bubble over like a pot of overcooked rice. She pointed at his name on the sheet, almost tearing the sheet with her thick finger. "Exactly!" I probably sounded like the crazy medieval townsperson who was screaming, "Burn the witch!" in the town center. "So hand me your hand so I can cuff them." Tomaz looked between us. "I don't recall, but let's look into this. 1 second. Tomaz slammed the door so quickly there wasn't any way of stopping the door. The door flew like a Lizzo song on the Billboard Hot 100. "Damn it!" I said, testing the doorknob to find it was locked. No shocker. "Well, he's not going anywhere. Should we go to the back door?" We both turned to the garage to hear the roar of a car and the garage door pop open at lightning speed. Tomaz's car shot out of the garage as if his car was being played by an aggressive kid with miniatures. Before we could even react, Tomaz was flying down a street where cars were parked on both sides. He was easily going 40, where earlier I had barely been comfortable maneuvering at 15. "Crap!" Mariah kept it family-friendly, although I said something more explicit. We both got into my Jeep, but by the time I turned over the engine, Tomaz had disappeared like a 1960s murder victim. I hoped his car had flipped over nearby like a cinematic car chase finale. I'd even take a drunk driver collision right now, as long as everyone turned out fine, and we could apprehend Tomaz. "I think we're done working today," Mariah suggested. She didn't have to suggest that twice. "We should get ready for the festivities tonight," I muttered, slowly moving my car back towards the east side.